On June 23rd, during the day, despite all this talkativeness and sociability, Mars gets activated here very strongly. Mars is quite an aggressive planet, and during the day it gets triggered here, literally by an aspect from the Moon at around 11 in the morning. So, literally until noon, there might be a feeling of being wound up, ready for some quick, sharp discussions. And here, it's especially clear what Mars in Virgo is all about. I've already given an introduction about it last week. And here you'll see this mental strength, a powerful intellect coming into play in discussions, cooperation, literally grinding away at knowledge, science, digging into things, seeking collaboration, going through reports, accounting, paperwork, in other words, really engaging your brain so that it starts working at full power. And the main quality of this day is the willingness to quickly and boldly enter into cooperation, partnerships, and agreements. There's a very strong rationalizing streak during this period. In the first half of the day, you might feel like you're analyzing and rationalizing everything that comes your way. Relationships, okay. I lay out all the pros and cons of the relationship. If I'm doing accounting, I immediately notice every single number, every report. If I get to the garden beds, not a single weed will escape my attention. And the whole first half of the day is like that, really energetic, full of drive. The second half of the day is softer. Here, the excitement of Mars, which won't let go until noon, is no longer driving things. That's why the first half of the day is very effective and productive. Kind of an oxymoron. Let's move on. The 24th, on Tuesday. Basically, the Moon remains in Gemini here. There's a lot of intellectual energy, a huge number of mental tasks on our minds that we're working through. But again, that benevolence of Jupiter I mentioned earlier is very strong here. There's a sense that, in general, the world, despite the ongoing rush to run here and there and solve things, overall feels like life is good, and the world itself is a kind, welcoming place. It's as if this world was created by caring forces up above, and you feel some kind of support, involvement, and attention from these higher powers. That feeling is present, and there's an inner sense of trust, no matter what happens. In this sense, I really like Indian culture. And India, probably, would best correspond to the symbol of the sign Cancer, which is exactly where Jupiter is moving into now. Indians have this innate quality, connected to the idea of, let things be as they will. Why should I worry? The gods decide everything for everyone. I'm just going through life here. And it's this feeling that we simply put our hope in the gods ourselves. Well, we'll do what we can, but we won't stress too much about it. And this sense of trust in higher powers, it's definitely there. And this Cancerian theme of family, of the mother, of the child, it also comes through very clearly during these days. The new moon will be tomorrow, but today is also a very powerful day with this feeling of Jupiter. Another feature of this day is that the moon runs into the nodes of the past and the future, literally getting stuck between the programs of the past and the future, and attention forms, should you run this way or that way. This happens closer to 5 in the evening Moscow time, and it creates this kind of pulling in different directions. So, we need to sort out some old programs, and at the same time, we want to latch onto some new programs and do something with them too. That's why the evening, in general, suggests a certain hustle and bustle of events. I would expect it to be quite constructive, especially considering the overall inner sense of bliss, this warmth spreading throughout the body, and in general, well, it feels great, but there's still something you need to hustle for somewhere. And basically, the whole day goes by in this kind of running around. Trying to get things done quickly here, get things done there, run over here, run over there. So it's this kind of hustle and bustle, but still in a pretty comfortable state. So, Wednesday, the 25th. And here we have a new moon, which will happen in the second half of the day. In the morning, the moon moves into the sign of Cancer, roughly around 6 or 7 in the morning. And right away, in the first half of the day, you can feel these vibrations of Jupiter, like a certain sense of blessing, a certain atmosphere where it feels like there's a mission, a purpose in life, or some higher destiny you can trust in. But at the same time, in the morning, aspects to Saturn and Neptune also come into play, and they're in Aries, the sign where war drums are beating, where there are challenges and adrenaline-charged things happening. So, in the morning, there's both this atmosphere of blessing under Jupiter, and at the same time, some notes of bold, tough Saturn energies. Basically, you'll feel both energies. The only thing is, all these things I just mentioned, the tough, Saturnian kind of stuff, are really only in play until about 10 in the morning Moscow time, and then they pretty much fade away. And already, by around 11 in the morning, you really start to feel the Jupiterian sense of well-being taking over, and for the rest of the day, that's the mood, including the new moon itself, which happens under these vibes. The new moon itself is set to happen around 1 in the afternoon, and, as with any significant new moon, it's really important to consciously set a clear and positive intention at this particular time. But it's not so much about setting an intention with your head as it is with your heart, especially when it comes to goals that are guided by the heart. Intentions related to children, intentions related to parents, intentions about family unity, intentions connected to business and people-oriented directions anywhere we care about others. So, if your business is connected to medicine, art, music, people, feelings, or maybe even a kindergarten, then this is exactly where you should be setting intentions for such new projects. Again, Jupiter is beginning its new annual cycle, and this is the main, first point of its activation. In other words, this is exactly where the programs are born that will then gain momentum and strength throughout the year, and by the end of this year, they will reveal their full power. So go for it. First and foremost, set your intentions with your heart. Yes, if you're involved in business or the service industry, of course, use your head as well, but first and foremost, try to tune into the rhythm. What makes your heart beat? What are your soul's desires? What kind of peace and rest do you want from life? And here, rest is not just an empty word or something to gloss over, it's actually one of the main, fundamental things. Because the sign of Cancer is all about knowing how to rest and how to restore your energy. And now, at the end of June and continuing until mid-July, this is a very important time to take a pause in life. So, if May and the first half of June were full of crazy energy, and by mid-June, towards the end, in the week leading up to the 15th, you might have felt like you were just about to collapse. Everything is already twitching. You're at your limit, and now, well, you just have to. So right now, this is exactly the time to rest to the fullest. Take a break, disconnect from everything, just hang out somewhere, sit by the water, meditate, sit in silence, give your life a recharge, a reboot, a reset, a reboot, because by mid-June you've already had more than enough overload, way over the top. Right now, rest as if you've gone on vacation, like you're at some kind of health resort. And there, you just go through the treatments, not worrying about anything. You can even skip a treatment or two, just go for a walk in the woods. That's what this new moon is about, not just for a day, but almost for several weeks. That's why it's really important here to come up with, maybe figure out, some kind of program where you can recover. And it's worth setting such programs as intentions here as well. There's also a moment here, closer to night, specifically around midnight, around 11:40, when there's an aspect to the black moon, which is about jealousy, anxiety, and emotional games around intimacy. It's specifically a game, specifically manipulation of the concept of intimacy. Here, you need to be very careful, because you might get caught up in some hang-ups, Or you might find yourself in situations like a love triangle, in some kind of emotional uncertainty, trying to play out some sort of emotional scenario. In short, this is a kind of manipulation, a game with emotions that arises here. Don't get carried away with the game, because the black moon can create a precondition for doubting sincerity. And here, these doubts are like a wormhole. They start to gnaw at us. Our task, on the one hand, is not to fall for the provocation of our own hang-ups, and on the other hand, not to give others unnecessary reasons for doubts and hang-ups. So, Thursday, June 26th. The moon remains in the sign of Cancer. The atmosphere stays quite warm, soulful, and emotional. Closer to the evening, the moon is also moving toward an aspect with the node of the future, which suggests that I am ready to let new emotions and a new environment into my life. This aspect with the moon's node of the future happens roughly around 6 in the evening, and it brings this feeling that I want my life to be filled with new colors, events, people, and circumstances. If we talk about the day of the new moon itself, which was yesterday, that is, Wednesday, this day is really meant for setting intentions, and it can even be associated with solitude. On the day of the new moon, it's not really encouraged to be in a social setting or to rush anywhere. It's better just to spend time with yourself, with your soul, to have a conversation with it, and to connect with your inner feelings. The day of the new moon, that is, Wednesday, is more of an introspective day. But the second lunar day, which is today, Thursday, is exactly the day to find yourself in some environment, to start socializing, to begin communication and interaction with people. At the same time, Venus can play a very significant role here, as it is currently in the sign of Taurus and is associated with material benefits. And this Venus is moving along the node of the past. I'm pulling some material benefits from my old connections, my old acquaintances. There are some people from the past who provide me with material guarantees or help me sort out various financial matters. That's why the node of the past is also presented in a very appealing way this week. It could actually play out on Sunday the 22nd, Tuesday the 24th, and here on Thursday the 26th, when the theme comes up of a pleasant person from the past with whom you are connected by successful material or financial projects. And perhaps it's about returning to some pleasant old financial story. Maybe it's the desire to buy something you've been planning for a long time but kept putting off, or to return to some financial direction from the past. That's how the influence of Venus and the node of the past manifests on this day. Let's move on. And now, Friday the 27th. One of the most important days of the week. It's important specifically because of its prophetic potential. The dreams you have both on the night from Thursday to Friday and from Friday to Saturday can have phenomenal significance for the future. In general, the topic of dreams has been having a strong influence over the past few months. But now, within the context of this day, this Friday, you might have a dream that just sticks with you and won't let go. It grabs hold of you and gives you a clear, obvious sense of what realities you'll have to deal with in the future. At the same time, a similar effect could have happened on June 9th. There could also have been a very important symbolic dream back then, with similar meanings. But here, on the 27th, it's likely to play out even more vividly, powerfully, and with a real wow effect. It's one thing to have these prophetic energies. And the second point is that here, any conversation, it's like someone just blurted out something brilliant, and you suddenly realize the scale of what was just said. On this day, communicate as much as possible, stay in touch with people who literally awaken your consciousness and lead you to some kind of insight happening in your mind. Because here, simple conversations can push you toward understanding that a big new program, a major new cycle, is beginning. And these days are prophetically telling us about these new cycles. Why is this happening? Because here, there's an aspect to Mercury, which symbolizes our mind, our operating mechanism in the head. And this operating mechanism connects with Saturn and Neptune, which have started their multi-year cycles. Saturn is there for 3 years, Neptune is there for 2 decades. And this combination literally fills our consciousness with these new settings for the life ahead, which we are all entering in the coming years. And that's why these days carry a prophetic influence. It's as if they're saying, here it is, a new big cycle is beginning, pay attention to it. And overall, the entire year 25 is actually a bit similar to what happened in 2020, the COVID year, when the old reality collapses and you have to sort of set yourself on new tracks, on new programs. In this sense, 25 can also plunge you for several months into a lack of work, into some kind of transitional stages and processes, when you realize that things can't go on as before, but finding your way in the new reality can take a while. But there are days that hit the mark right away and give you the feeling that you immediately see the corridor you need to move through. That's exactly what these last days of June are like. They are very important, both because of the new moon that happens on the 25th, which expands our consciousness and gives us an understanding of a grand, inspiring perspective for our lives and how to achieve happiness, since it happens with the planet of happiness, Jupiter, and also because of those moments of dreaming on the 27th, or the conversations on the 27th, which lift the veil on the future that awaits us in the coming decades. So, on this day, each of you will be your own prophet. At the same time, the main aspects here occur at 10 in the morning, 10 a.m., and, basically, approximately until about 2 in the afternoon. So, in the morning, while you're still sleeping, this might happen. Then, in the first half of the day, when you're interacting with others, try to be as talkative and sociable as possible, seek out dialogue, maybe even just chat with the cashier at the store about anything at all. It'll just click in your head on its own, even without you trying to achieve or realize anything. Just catch the mood of your mind, whatever is happening inside you. What radio waves is your consciousness picking up at that moment? Of course, I'm sounding very esoteric right now, but you'll really feel all that esotericism and mystique there. Because there are moments in our lives when we can just feel that we're at a really important crossroads. Let me share my concept of how I see the trajectories of fate in general. For example, in my own fate, I can clearly see, let's say, 10 key points. And sometimes, when you pass through one of these pivotal points, it feels like, oh, I know this moment, I understand. As if I've known this moment since childhood. Or maybe I've seen this moment in my dreams. And there's this feeling of déjà vu, a clear, distinct sense that I'm passing through a pivotal moment. Then, maybe for a year or even many years, I just wander freely, drifting here and there, and then once again, there's some kind of anchor point in my life, maybe 10 years later, or maybe just 6 months down the line. But again, there's this feeling that I've crossed another significant threshold. Similarly, right around this week, you might feel as if you're passing through some key turning point in your life. And there's that sense of déjà vu. I knew this moment, it's as if I've seen it before, maybe in my dreams. Or dreams here might reveal some pivotal moment in your life. That's why I recommended paying special attention to them. Overall, it's a bit of an esoteric picture, but I think you'll more or less get what I mean. Let's move on and take a look. Saturday, the 28th. Saturday, the 28th of June. I've already forgotten which month it is. Again, pay attention to the dreams you have from Friday to Saturday. I already explained all of this in detail when I talked about Friday. I won't repeat myself. This day is especially important for its intuitiveness. Try to communicate as much as possible throughout the day. Don't stop talking, because your mind will literally start to reveal the program for the coming decade. Your inner intuition is just insanely strong right now. You'll be shocked at how easily you can pick up on some codes of the future, gain awareness of major revelations, and so on. At the same time, the importance of this day is also connected to family and ancestry. This isn't really about work matters, just like everything that's been happening since the 25th. It's all about the relationships you're part of, your close circle, who you're growing with, who you're in the same sandbox with, who your loved ones are. Sometimes work matters, especially everything related to artificial intelligence, and all these technologies can be pushed far into the background here. At times, you might even feel an inner crossroads this Saturday, like you've gotten too caught up in your career, all these new technologies, gadgets, and even some kind of learning. But what about attention to your family, your loved ones, your homeland, your country house, your roots? Where is that? And these days, it's as if our consciousness gets turned upside down, bringing an understanding that, aside from all these new waves of processes, technologies, artificial intelligences, and all this large-scale development happening in the world, there is something basic and fundamental within me, a kind of human mission. And that can become a real crossroads, even specifically this Saturday, when you realize that this is what truly matters, not all that other stuff. So, it's not the technologies, not all these new trends and things popping up in life that are important, but rather something more essential, something deeper. This happens because Saturn and Neptune are now in Aries, and Aries is about the present moment, about being close to the core of your life, to something fundamental, the reason I was born. And all the superficial stuff, all these trends, information spaces, social networks, all of that can just seem like nonsense on a day like this. Instead, you'll be searching for something fundamentally more meaningful. And so there's this kind of genuine search, a search for your own, the essence of your birth, and that's really going to be a recurring theme here. At times, it might even come through as a rejection of certain professional aspects, from the perspective that maybe you got too caught up in your career path or whatever, and didn't pay attention to the fundamental, basic things that matter to you as a person. Such deep realizations can very well happen here. What I just described doesn't even have to play out as some kind of internal philosophical mumbo-jumbo running through your head. In fact, the situation might unfold in a much simpler way. On Saturday, you might be faced with a suggestion like, quit your tech job, leave all those complicated social projects, and focus on what's fundamentally important. For example, maybe you need to go back to your hometown and take care of your loved ones. You need to return to some basic profession or your core qualities to get back to something more important. Of course, right now all of this sounds pretty debatable. Basically, the only thing I wanted to get across is that there's a crossroads here. A crucial, important one that requires a choice. That's all for now. The moon spends the whole day in Leo. Basically, it's about the fact that it's a show, some kind of show. Leo is also about feeling unity, wholeness in your life. I don't want to be running around in life, here and there, being everywhere at once. I want to make a fundamental decision. That's how this day feels like a very important moment. Because Leo, by its very nature, is a very whole sign, and it doesn't like all this fuss, social media, running here, running there. What is fundamental, meaningful, and most important in my life, that's the question at the door. Now, moving on. Sunday, June 29th. On the one hand, it's worth mentioning that during the night, specifically around 3 o'clock Moscow time, in the night from Saturday to Sunday, the moon connects with Venus, the planet of love. If you can spend this night with a close loved one, wake up together, then there's this Venusian atmosphere of happiness and being loved. It's good if you don't miss it, maybe, at the very least, you'll have a pleasant dream, I hope. And then it moves into the sign of Virgo. And there, a completely different story begins. The theme of technology starts to come into play. In fact, the theme of technology might kick in as early as around 2 o'clock, when the moon touches the planet of technology, Uranus, and then later in the evening, after 4, the moon will move into the sign of Virgo, the sign of the supermind. The theme of innovation, the search for partnerships, accounting, paperwork, all of that starts to get your brain really moving and buzzing on this night from Sunday to Monday. The night promises, in fact, a conjunction with Mars. When you just can't sleep because your mind is exploding with ideas, you feel like you have to rush off and do this, rush off and do that. And in this sense, the night from Sunday to Monday might really turn out to be sleepless. And with this Martian excitement, you might honestly need to take a sleeping pill just to get some rest, because your body will be all fired up the whole night, mentally energized, even wanting to wake up, do some sports, get something done, and then go back to bed. You could spend the whole night entertaining yourself like that, but in any case, the dynamic, active brain energy will be very obvious here. So, that's the super duper forecast for the week. Again, there are stories for each zodiac sign. All the links are below the video, including breakdowns for Aries, Taurus, and others for this week. In short, you'll find everything useful for yourself there. That's all from me. Again, leave your feedback, let me know if these forecasts help you or not. My name is Pavel Chudinov. Go ahead and leave some hearts, and I wish you a great period ahead. It's a very important time. Subscribe to stay updated. Bye-bye.